talk about cancel culture.
Yes, let's.
And boundaries.
Are you sure?
I think so. Let's do it. And boundaries and like who gets to say what.
My introduction to comedy was quite early. I would crack jokes, and that was always a way to kind of like rapport build, as they say nowadays.
Do you think the industry has actually moved forward, or do you think it's just become like better at optics?
So there's been some changes, but I think there's a lot more as well, because while there are commissions, I think there's a level of investment that is lacking as well. You know, art can be polarizing anyway, and I also feel like, you know, particularly for black people, art's been one of the only ways that we can observe social mobility.
Hi Black Circle family, and welcome back for another episode. And today's guest is someone who spent the last decades shaping British comedy in his own lane. From the stage to TV to podcasting, he's built a career on saying what he actually thinks and not watering it down for anyone. So a warm welcome to Dane Baptiste.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. What a wonderful introduction.
No, and
I feel like people say all the time, but nah, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and it's well deserved. And, you know, I mentioned there that there's been like a 10-year plus on our screen.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go back to the origins of it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, growing up, were you naturally funny, or was like comedy something you used as a tool?
I think it's both, you know. I think that I got into comedy. I guess I kind of enjoyed it because when you're a kid, there's only a few things that I grew up in the Caribbean household. My parents were from Grenada. So there's only a few things that they'll let you watch. So normally with comedy was something that family could enjoy together. So I remember being a kid with like my cousins and stuff, and like Christmas time we'd watch like Coming to America, and you know like the Real McCoy would be on, and my dad also used to get like a lot of pirate tapes and stuff. So I'd see like a lot of American films like Meteor Man and I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, which is like a way in the show. So yeah, my introduction to comedy was quite early. But then I also feel like comedy was definitely something I used as a tool where if I'd be in new situations where I wasn't very sure of myself or just want to icebreak and stuff, then I would crack jokes, and that was always a way to kind of like rapport build, as they say nowadays. But yeah, it was also always a nice way to intro, because I feel like, you know, I didn't have a background whereby I could rely on like my strength or my postcode or my family to like, you know, to I suppose elicit respect from people. So yeah, growing up in Southeast London, and yeah, being a funny guy if you're not a baller or a trapper was it worked. But yeah, I feel like as well with me, I've always been somebody, not that I made a deliberate point, but like if I'm trying to notice the obvious and I talk about certain things that would annoy me and stuff like that, or get quite passionate about stuff, then people would tend to laugh at that. So yeah, it was kind of a weird way I found my voice in that respect. But yeah, I guess I feel like I've always been the funny one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm the funny one in my family. I think there's, you know, with your family don't really see you like the way that the rest of the world does, I suppose.
That's
Which kind of,
true.
which I feel like made me more of a comic as well, because like I said, my parents, they're very reserved, you know, just hardworking people, and they come from that generation. So in my household, it was very kind of strict in terms of children are seen and not heard. Like you have to be respectful and stuff as well. So yeah, being outside the house, like comedy was how I kind of rebelled.
Yeah, using that as a tool. No, exactly. And you said something interesting. You was like, you wasn't the funny one. Who maybe influenced you in terms of like your comedy?
I feel like, I guess I've got cousins who are more inclined to say wilder things than I would say. So they might be considered a lot funnier. But I'd say like early on, I probably tried out a lot of jokes on like my older sister. And it was like, again, it was less a way to kind of like talk to her on a level where, you know, I guess when you're an older sibling in the Caribbean household, you're almost like another parent. So it's kind of a way to kind of have conversation with her, talk to her in a way where she wouldn't just see me as like a child. So that was kind of one of the ways that kind of helped. And then, yeah, I guess there's the influences of seeing people that look like myself on TV and just been gravitating towards that so much because, as I said, like, obviously music was a big part of my life and growing up, but to see, in terms of like acting and stuff, the first experience I saw of people that resembled me was in the medium of comedy. So like I said, seeing things like the Real McCoy, seeing like Get Up, Stand Up, like even like listening to the radio and stuff, and I'd listen to like Choice and I'd hear like adverts for like Blue Mountain Theatre and Oliver Samuels and stuff.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I used to be so excited, and just like, you know, when I'd hear about shows with like Felicity I can't wait to watch this one, sounds amazing. And like, you know, even like hearing about people like Robbie G and Luella Gideon and so many of the I suppose the Titans and the predecessors and the ancestors, so to speak. Not say that they're that old, but that kind of influenced me, and it's definitely a world that I really fantasize about being a part of.
And again, just going back to like those influences, were there anyone specific, whether like UK or US, where you was like, you talk about representation, right? Seeing people who look like you. So anyone specific? I know like Eddie Murphy spoke about a lot, but was there anyone?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, and I guess there's different stages of my life, and the more I got into comedy, then I would see different, like, I suppose, icons who would influence me in different ways. So definitely early influences would be like the Wayans family, not just the Wayans brothers, because I spent a lot of time in the States. So I'm a dual resident, so I got like a green card. So my family lived in the States as well. So we'd be in New York, and then I'd be exposed to like In Living Color and shows like Malcolm X, and then like lots of, like the 90s was like a big part for like black cinema, was like a real renaissance then as well. So, you know, any one of those black comedy films, I would watch them if I could get my hands on them. And so there's like a real long list of people, whether it's like Kanye Wayans, Damon, Marlon, Sean, Kim. Then there'd be like Jamie Foxx, of course, Eddie Griffin. Then obviously even like sitcoms like The Cosby Show. And then I remember like even, you know, I was a big fan of like Brandy and Moesha. I thought that was amazing as well.
Yeah, big up to the women comedians.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's an interesting thing as well, which I'm sure we'll get to in the thing. But like when I grew up, like seeing women in comedy, where it was like Roseanne, then there was Brett Butler had a show called Grace Under Fire. I remember seeing, which I used to love as well. Margaret Cho had a show. Then I remember seeing Angela Marr on The Real McCoy, and I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like because obviously she had all of the on-point references to the culture as well, but she could also do like kind of like whimsical and stuff as well. And in the same way that people looked at like Catherine Tate as being like a real big pioneer for like character comedy, Angela Marr could do the same thing as well. And then she had her show Get Up, Stand Up on Channel 4, and I was just like mind blown by just the level of talent. Plus, she was a playwright as well. So that was like, yeah, massive influence. Then I'd say I remember seeing Eddie Murphy Raw, because I remember watching that with my dad. And again, just blowing my mind. It was like the first time, obviously I'd seen comedy, but that was the first time I was like seeing superstar comedy, because obviously it's off the back of Eddie Murphy being the man of the 80s, then having this amazing comedy show that's just iconic, and then even then finding out that it was like work done with Eddie Murphy and Paul Mooney, and Kanye Wayans wrote it, Robert Townsend was involved as well. So even then it was just like, just seeing what collaborative work could create as well. I was mesmerized, and then I remember seeing CB4, so then I was like, Chris Rock was cool as well.
Yeah, straight out of Low Cash.
And Charlie Murphy's in it as well.
Yeah.
I recognize him as well. And then House Party, which obviously we all know House Party was almost being like a cool like teen comedy film, but obviously as a comic as well, it was like first time I saw like John Witherspoon and Robin Harris, who, you know, again was just an unbelievably talented like comic, and just his timing was just so funny. So by that time I was like a comedy nerd, so anytime I could, especially seeing like black comedy at the time, like some of the more obscure ones like Bebe's Kids and Sprung, and some people know him, but you know what else as well, like when you would watch like black music videos, a lot of the time they'd have soundtracks for comedy films. So that was like a way of getting into it as well. So you see like a good tune and be like, oh, this is good, and then what film is this from? Because they'd be like, so like films like, there was a film, Jodeci did a song for a film called Who's the Man, and then there was another film called Get on the Bus, which had a great soundtrack. Obviously like Why Do Fools Fall in Love had a great soundtrack. So there was always like this mixture of music and comedy, and I suppose it was like, in this country, obviously seeing people that look like you was a very rare thing when we were growing up, especially like late 80s, 90s. It's very rare to see people that look like us. So whenever you get the opportunity, I grab onto it with both hands. But obviously, like I said, because of age constraints, probably comedy was one of the best ways to kind of introduce me to global black culture. So I just kind of
and I want to talk a little bit later about the differences between the US and the UK scene, but we'll get into that. I want to go back a little bit and talk about Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Yes.
So you were the first black British comic nominated for Best Newcomer at Edinburgh Fringe. So did that feel like progress or pressure for you?
For me, it felt like it was pressure first and progress, but I wasn't aware of that until after the award nomination, because obviously I'd seen some comics go before me, and like, you know, comics people know today like Kane Brown and Slim and Quincy had gone to Edinburgh before. And I remember having a conversation with another comic, Donna Spence, who was kind of like, she kind of gave me a lot of advice and helped nurture me when I started out trying comedy. So I'll do comedy like maybe once every, it could be like 8 months, like this blue moon, just I'm going to give it 5 minutes to try and see what happens. And so she'd like, I could see her dipping her toe in it. She kind of made me aware of Edinburgh because I didn't even know that there was this big comedy festival. But she was kind of like, well, it's not really for us. They don't really recognize us. And I was like, well, that is ridiculous because some of the best talent I've ever seen is in our community. So we'll have to change that, I suppose. But with Edinburgh being the world's largest arts festival, you know, there's like thousands of shows, comedy shows that got there. And so I guess the objective for me was to have a good show that people came to and have a good run and not be too broke by the end of it. So then being nominated in itself, irrespective of what your race is a massive achievement in comedy in general. And, you know, a lot of people vie for it. And then, yeah, after the nominations, when I found out being the first Black Briton to be nominated for any award in Edinburgh was, it was amazing. I feel like for me, I found it empowering because I guess I was aware that by proving this proof of quality and stuff would mean that the industry and how they regarded Black British comics would have to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was all a part of the whole kind of the brand I put together because, you know, I did comedy for about 3 or 4 years before I went to Edinburgh. And, you know, there's a lot of microaggressions and a lot of people that tried to get dissuade Black comics from discussing race. It was something that people didn't really want to have the conversation about. So I had to learn very novel ways to discuss race in a way that people wouldn't switch off or clench up. And, you know, even when comics would discuss race, a lot of the time the critical class within comedy would try to downplay it. They would say that we were trying to mimic African American comedians and as if there wasn't like a race issue in the UK.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a real point of principle to make sure that I introduced an audience who probably was not that aware of the Black British experience for a long time back to us because, you know, and I think we'll discuss it later probably as well, but like, you know, the turn of the century was a weird one where Black culture seemed to be doing well because like garage music was doing well and, you know, people were getting deals and we were seeing more people, but at the same time, having that explanation to discuss the culture didn't really accompany that. And while we were kind of like prospering in like, you know, live music and stuff, Black faces were disappearing from the TV screen because like early 2000s, obviously Richard Blackwood was the guy, and again a massive influence. And then after he had his show, he kind of like, not through his own fault, but they kind of pushed him out, and you didn't really see anybody like him for a very, very long time. So there definitely was the motivation to kind of put the community back on the map. But I struggled with like even finding an agent and stuff. Like I guess a lot of people didn't realize how to market me, so I kind of had to find a aspiring agent who hadn't worked as an agent before, who had worked as a producer, and basically say to her that this is my vision, and if you are on board, then this is what we should do to make it happen. And she kind of had been working with some other comics from more diverse backgrounds, but traction wasn't really necessarily there. But yeah, we just wanted to find a pathway by which, you know, we could be ourselves without diluting who we are or our experience, but be able to perform that in front of an audience of people that don't necessarily look like us. Because, you know, I always understood, like, for a lot of British people, unless you play for their local sports team, they ain't really seeing Black people that often.
Yeah.
And so their understanding of Blackness comes largely from media, and if we're not on the media, they don't know anything other than what they're told.
And it's really funny, not to interrupt, but I was looking at one of your posts today, and it was basically, I mean, talking about blackface disappearing, but that resurgence of it, and you was basically saying, like, was this okay when you was given the, you know, Little Britain, for example, and David Baddiel, so it kind of gradually made its way back in. I think the optics today is still a bit.
Well, wait, it left, but I feel like there's this idea that a lot of the racist tropes that have definitely been shouted down in the US, I think there's still this idea, people feel they can get away with it in tongue-in-cheek, and a lot of people try to mask their racial microaggressions with ironic humour.
British humour.
And British humour, and what they think is quite is innuendo. But I definitely feel like because the size of the institutions that represent, you know, Black people aren't the same here, I guess people feel they can kind of get away with stuff. And again, it was something where I was like, well, yeah, I'm not really feeling this, and I think something has to be done about it. And you know, it's a strange one, because you know, for people to still rely on that as jokes in the 21st century,
Yeah.
I thought was crazy. And what people were trying to normalize, I felt was like, you know, very insulting. And I feel like while there are a lot of people who feel like, you know, there's aspects of our reality that they can't change, I was like, nah, fuck that, man. I feel like there are a number of hurdles that, you know, our African American cousins and family have had to overcome. But those begin with someone having to say something.
Yeah, of course.
And,
absolutely.
you know, there can be risk in that and backlash. But for me, I was just kind of like, well, I am aware of how, like I said, racism is something that I've also used comedy as a tool to combat in my life and in my personal life. But I'm aware that not everybody has those same tools, and not everybody's had the same access to, you know, seeing art and creativity in the States. Not everyone's had the same grounding in their culture that I've had. And so I wanted to be able to use that tool to kind of, you know, arm people with the tools to be able to deal with it. Because, like, if you're being racially aggressed or abused, then after a while, it's only a time before you snap. And then what's very easy for people to portray you as the aggressor.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
But I've learned that, like, ridicule can be much more effective than just having to resort to aggression. And so if you can make fun of people who would try to do the same to you, that can be just as effective. And, you know, whether you're a woman or if you are, you know, one of very few black people outside of a metropolitan city, like in London, you're spoiled for choice in terms of your access to culture. You live in Scotland or you live in Norwich, you don't have the same thing. But by, you know, me using comedy and having visibility, I can give those people the same tools to, you know, use when they're dealing with the same kind of adversity.
I love that perspective of using comedy as kind of like an armor or that sharp wit, and just having that kind of like in your arsenal, which is really cool.
Yeah, because you can sneer and you can screw up your face at racists. When you laugh at them, and you laugh in the face of an idea like white supremacy, and also, you know, you can do your due diligence to dismantle it as an idea, then I think it can be very liberating for yourself. But I think it's just, again, it's empowering that, you know, if people can just laugh off stuff, then, you know, nothing is going to frustrate your oppressors more than you smiling in the face of their hatred.
Oh, absolutely, yes. We spoke about TV and your time on TV and all the things you've done. Well, we spoke about it in the intro. So Sunny D,
yes,
that was on BBC Three, and that was the first sitcom written by a black British writer with a black British cast to appear in the BBC in over 20 years, which is insane to me. So when you created Sunny D, did you realise you were filling a gap in the industry that was ignored for years?
To be honest, I'm trying to remember. I feel like I was definitely trying to make something that hadn't really been seen on British TV before. But yeah, I guess how the time had passed, because, you know, you might look at reruns, or, you know, if you're immersed in your culture, it's almost like I probably, like a lot of our peers, got to the point where, like, you don't really depend on British TV to represent you.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, you know, we're in the advent of like early kind of like digital media and stuff. So whatever TV in the UK couldn't provide, I might try and find elsewhere. And a large part of that influence helped me to kind of put together Sunny D as a concept. But then I was like, again, I found out, I was like, yeah, no one's done this on, you know, BBC in like 20 years. I was like, but then I was like, you know what? That actually makes sense, because, like I said, early 2000s was when I started seeing people disappearing from TV. So when I found out it was 20 years, I was like, well, yeah. So again, got to make it happen as a point of principle. And you know, it was there's a lot of stuff going on at the time, because I had written that show for a long time. And what it also meant was, because there had been nothing of that nature and that represented the community, it wasn't like they could get writers in to be like, let's help you, you know, world build. So I had to do a lot of stuff on my lonesome. So I hadn't really written scripts before. I didn't go to drama school or any kind of theatre school, so I had to kind of learn how to plot episodal arcs, series arcs, then work out character bios, then world build to include those characters. And then I guess the difference between doing stand-up is, like, obviously I'm trying to find the best punchline when I perform on stage, whereas in a dialogue I might have a line, but then someone's got to have a funny line, because we're trying to chase those laughs as well. So it's kind of stepping outside of yourself to put yourself in the mind frame of the characters you've created as well. So that was a lot. And then being involved in casting, the soundscape. But I guess it was enjoyable, because I guess Sunny D, whatever happened to me, I wanted it to be like a homage to all of the influences I had. So there'll be elements that people might see from Moesha in there. You'll see elements of, like, in Living Colour, there's some sketch in there as well. Like I said, because I was weaned on like 90s like black culture, a lot of the soundtracks, like songs that I remember from that time as well. And yeah, I just think, and I can definitely say that there was nothing else like it on TV. And you know, today when I see, you know, a lot of the shows that do have black casts on the BBC, and just shows in general, I'm very happy that I can see the influence, even if people don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I
Of
can
course,
definitely, I can definitely see the influence.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and even today, it's like, you know, people like Bemi Ikamelo, who was in League of Their Own, and then she's on Last Comedian Standing. First time she did TV was on Sunny D. So she was from the Royal Shakespeare Company, just like our friend David Ajao, and that's kind of their first foray into television. So not just, you know, my debut, but for like these very talented actors and stuff as well. Catherine Ryan is obviously a very well-known Canadian comedian. That was the first time she was in a TV role as well.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot of firsts.
Yeah.
So, and you know, just the pressure of you got to do it properly, because you know normally they go, well, we tried and then we didn't work with Dane, so yeah. So yeah, use
again,
that
that
as
representation
motivation.
of putting your best foot forward and having to be the best in the room, and as they say, like going above and beyond then like what you have to do with like your white counterpart, for example. Which
Learning to keep your creative control.
Yes.
And then not be portrayed as aggressive when you say how you want something.
Yeah.
Then you've got to learn a very manipulative way to almost make your ideas sound like their ideas, because there's a lot of egos where they want to imprint on your project as well. And I'd heard with a lot of people who had tried the same thing or had their opportunities, it had been changed so much that in the end they didn't recognize the final version. And I just didn't want that to happen to me. So it helped me understand that sometimes when people say someone's a diva or someone might be difficult, a lot of the time people just have their idea of vision and they want to realize that. And so yeah, I just kind of had to learn. I learned a lot on the job, basically.
Yeah, of course. And you sounded like you had many hats on as well, and just having
yeah.
to play every role.
Literally, I think I had like 23 costume changes throughout the series. And it's not even a long series, but obviously because it involves a lot of sketch. Like I'm doing wigs, I'm doing suits, I'm changing all the time. Like I'm doing green screen, like the whole thing. Like it's 4 episodes or 5 episodes. But it's like, imagine like a long Missy Elliott video or Ludacris video. That's kind of what I was going for aesthetically, but that is like a lot of work. So, you know, there's like 5 to 6 weeks back-to-back filming in Media City in Salford. Up at 4, you're in a makeup chair before 7, and you know, because it's like the set is there for you. So anyone's like, Dane, what do you think about this lighting and blah blah blah? No, not lighting before. Dane, we just need to change the script really quickly because we had to swap one of these things out. So yeah, being involved at every step of the creative process, it was very intense, but an amazing experience, I have to say. And I'm not sure if even today there's a lot of, you know, in the States, you know, you get people that are showrunners who oversee a large part of the script and how it happens, but very rarely today will you see someone who has to like write the script, be involved in casting, be involved in soundtrack, script editing. I had to do all of it.
That's absolutely crazy. And so looking back, do you think the industry has actually moved forward, or do you think it's just become like better at optics?
It's a good question, actually. I think that the industry has... there's definitely been improvements numerically, and I see a lot more shows like Dreaming Whilst Black and Krongleton, Enterprise, which came out recently, Famalam, because obviously Akenji and Bemi, who wrote on Famalam, and they also did Black Ops, which is another show on BBC, and they also were on Sunny D as well. So, I mean, not directly, but I kind of take pride in it being kind of like a spin-off and being able to collab with those amazing artists as well. So there's been some changes, but I think there's a lot more as well, because while there are commissions, I think there's a level of investment that is lacking as well. Because even in my experience, like, I made a whole TV show, and I think the budget that we had available and how much was spent like was less than it took for like the 21 seconds video by So Solid. Like, I'm sure that cost a lot more than, you know, I mean, I remember watching a sketch show, I think it was like Catherine Tate or something like that, and somebody pulled up in like a Land Rover, and I was like, that Land Rover cost more than a whole episode of my whole show. And we had to make it work, because I remember, you know, we had to dash to Primark, we had to get like old costumes, like vintage costumes out. Bemi's bringing wigs, like Sasha Frost was in the show, she's bringing her own clothes. We're all supplying, like, this is how much people are collabing to make it happen. So while there is like some more I think optics have definitely improved, but I think there's still a level of investment that leaves much to be desired, to be honest with you.
And I think we see that across all industries when it comes to any black business, unfortunately. We're still quite behind. And, you know, talking about the business of comedy and like building longevity. So you've done TV, live shows, streaming and podcasts. So what did you realise early about not relying on just one lane?
For me, I guess it was just a natural progression. I think sometimes I'm somebody where I'm like, I just need to get this done and do it well and make sure that I master this before I move on to these other trades. But it just doesn't really pan out that way when you go into creativity. It's just never linear. So for me, I guess I understood that. I looked at people like, you know, somebody like Eddie Murphy or somebody like a Keenan Ivory Wayans, and it seemed natural that you can perform comedy, but you can also write comedy as well. So I guess my mindset was already like, naturally you could graduate from doing 5, 10, 20-minute sets to doing an hour of comedy, and then writing or working on a sitcom and writing on a sitcom. Because before that, I wrote on a sketch show called The Johnny and Inel Show, which was the first kids show on CBBC with 2 black leads. And I was the highest paid writer in that show, so I wrote the majority of sketches on that show too. So that was kind of my introduction for writing for TV anyway. And then that just naturally kind of led into more and more stuff. So I remember being in a writer's room for there's a show that became Good Luck Charlie, which is like an Idris Elba show that was on Netflix. Then wrote with Idris again on like the FIFA Awards. Then in 2020, me and Akemji wrote the Mobos, so I worked on that as well. So I mean, I'm just somebody where I never had my set on being a creative, because I saw like, black athletes and black musicians, but as many black comedians that were able to be in certain spaces, I didn't see that often. So every opportunity was just something I grabbed with both hands, because I just felt like lucky to be in that space and always wanted to exploit that opportunity, because not like I just feel like I didn't deserve it in terms of how the industry is, but it was just more the fact that comedy was something I just like doing as a hobby, and it's a part of my personality. I didn't think that I could say the jokes in real life on stage and be paid for it. So always been an amazing opportunity. So for me, it's like, it was almost like my head was down so much of just, let me do the next thing. Didn't even stop to think about it.
It's funny actually when you're saying about, like athletes and they've got different lanes, but also when I think about comedians moving into a different lane, it's usually like movies, and you think about like Kevin Hart's of it and things like that. So
but I guess Kevin Hart would be an example, and I guess he's followed the more recognizable route with Eddie Murphy, whereas I'd look at somebody like Dave Chappelle, who probably doesn't appear in movies that often, than the odd cameo, but his stand-up career has continued for like 30 years. So there's different paths, and you can diversify. I'm still relatively open. I guess I'm probably more focused on stand-up, but I wouldn't turn around doing films. I've done like mini-series and, like I said, done odd bits here and there. But I think that it's just important to leave yourself open, because you'll never know what you might find within these different paths. You might find a niche, or you might find like another space and find your groove in it, and then just keep going there. So I keep it pretty loose.
So with your podcast growing the way that it has, what does the platform give you think that TV never could?
Good question. I think the podcast for me just allows me to explore the social commentary that accompanies my jokes. I think that sometimes with comedy, you can kind of scratch the surface and stuff, and you can sometimes get in depth, but you got to remember that an audience is there to laugh, and so they don't necessarily want to hear all of like the intellectual stuff behind what fuels your jokes or your ideas. So with the podcast, I can explore those a bit better. I also think that I always found that for our community, even when we did make it into spaces where we like being funny, that even though British comedy is very rooted in satire and very rooted in discussion of politics, again, I wouldn't really see people that look like us in these spaces. So the podcast for me was about exploring those kind of themes and getting into a bit more detail. And, when people talk about like white comics, like, you have to be very intelligent to be a comedian, and you have to focus. Whereas us, it's like, you just got to make people laugh. And I was like, well, no, that's not going to work for me, I'm afraid. Because I even remember doing a pilot, which was supposed to be a pilot to introduce like black British comedians. And so everyone does their set, the little 5 minutes, whatever. They come backstage afterwards and they're like, so guys, that was great. What we want to do now is we've got a DJ, so one of you guys come up, we do like a dance, and that's how we close the show. And I was like, nope. And they was like, what Dane? Why? No.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen people dance at the end of Live at the Apollo.
Yeah.
Like Michael McIntyre's Roadshow. What are we dancing for? Like, I've already entertained these people, so I'm not doing that. And so there's just little things like that where you kind of have to grandstand and be like, I would like you to treat me the same way you would treat any white comic with this level of success. If I was a white comedian that's been successful in Edinburgh and successful on the BBC, you wouldn't even dare ask me that kind of stuff.
They wouldn't. Hi, Black Circle family. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. It would really mean the world to me if you could take 2 seconds just to like, follow, subscribe and share, and really help me to build this community and keep the conversation going. Thank you. I'm so glad you put your foot down and it's like, I'm not performing. Why do they want to put us into a box of like dancing? And it's like, there's so many other things they could have asked, but it's just, I'm so glad you put your foot down.
Because also like, and also like for me, it's like, where do we go next after that? Because comedy is one of these things where you can actually increase your ability as you get older. But I can't be in my 50s still trying to dance to get laughs. I can't do that. Some people might be able to do that. That might be their niche. But for me, I don't want to do that. And also, it's because, and like I said, it's because I want people to concentrate on what I am saying and give that a bit more timelessness. Because if you watch back and I'm doing like a bogle, you'll be like, this is old.
Yeah, we want to keep it evergreen,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like if I'm doing that Harlem Shake, you'll be like, what's going on here? How old is this guy?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, there's an element of being evergreen and timelessness where if you're just focused on the medium of carrying the joke and just the narrative, then that's what I was more focused on.
These people are very cheeky out here, I must say.
They're quite, as we have seen, more recently than ever.
Yes, exactly. Let's talk about cancel culture.
Yes, let's.
And boundaries.
Are you sure?
I think so. Let's do it. And boundaries and like who gets to say what. So do you think comedians today are starting to self-censor a little bit more now?
The short answer is yes. I think a lot of comedians are starting to self-censor, but I think that is probably something I observed early on in my career. I think that people always feel like there's an element of suppression in any art form when people don't get to be themselves. But at the same time, I think that you have to appreciate that all art is subjective, and no one is going to be universally loved or hated. Especially laughter is something that a lot of the time does happen at other people's expense.
Yeah.
So not everyone's going to laugh at it. Like, in the old 70s and stuff, like white guys would be on the stage and be like, my mother-in-law. Well, I'm sure mothers-in-laws didn't like those because obviously it kind of helped build a stereotype about being a mother-in-law. So I think that there's always been this element of self-censorship, but there's also been this element of resistance against any kind of censorship. Taboos change over time, but I think at the same time, even today, some of the freedoms that people have, those have come from people having to, break those taboos and kind of take the risk that comes with that. I think nowadays, in the advent of like a post-social media world, people try to create stuff for broad appeal, which was not something that we always did. Before, I think everyone would kind of have their niche kind of groups, whereas now, because of the phenomenon of virality, you never know who's going to see it and who's going to take offense. So I think that that's kind of informed people to kind of try and perform something that's going to have the most broad appeal, whereas that's something I don't give a fuck about. So I make it for people that like it. If you don't like it, well, I'm sorry. You weren't there when I wrote it, so I don't know why it offends you.
Yeah.
But also, if it does offend you, sometimes, good. I wrote it about you to offend you. So that's something I lean into. Like, I think that, art can be polarizing anyway. And I also feel like, particularly for black people, art's been one of the only ways that we can observe social mobility. And also, where we have lacked in representation in crucial spaces, like whether it's politics, whether it's in media, in terms of like, it could be journalism or even like economic discourse, we don't really get involved in these conversations. And so, like I said, because we're just told to like just keep balling or keep dancing. And so I just definitely feel like while a lot of people may go this way of trying to appease a much larger pool of stakeholders, like I'm not really doing that because I feel like fame is very temporary, and also you have to be very mindful of. I also think even if you want to be like a gimmicky or do like catchphrases, that's fine, but what do you want people to shout at you in the street like years from now, or say to you years from now when you're like with your family or your friends and someone recognizes you? What do you want them to say? And also, the internet is forever, so people will always be able to have a data trail of what you said and what you represented. So I think I'm mindful of what I say. And also, being a comedian, you can take the position of fool. Like, I'm not somebody, I might say something or have a thought, and I might express something, and it might be wrong. But I'm open to that being wrong because art is dynamic and it's always evolving. So something I might have said like 10 years ago is not the kind of thing I would say today. And I'm comfortable enough in myself to be like, I didn't know what I was talking about back then. Whereas, in my 20s, I couldn't really talk very well about relationships because my relationship experience was very limited. So some of the ideas I would have had about relationships, like as a woman, you might be like, oh, God. Whereas, I have had more experiences to see the multi-dimensional facets of a woman in a relationship, outside a relationship. So it can be more accurate. And obviously, so that's been a good experience that has informed my work as well.
You've evolved. So personally, like, where do you land? Because you have a very activist voice as well. So that balance of wanting to keep your authenticity and your activist and not wanting to not be PC, because I don't think you are like completely PC, but that balance, where does that lie for you?
Yeah, I think for me, like, I mean, do you know what? It's interesting because, people have regarded me before as political or, referred to me as an activist. I don't reject the idea of being an activist, but I'm also aware that what activism is and how some people do that. They do that out of the spaces I'm in, and they do that without any kind of reward, and they don't receive plaudits. And so I never want to take away, the attention from people that are doing the boots on the ground. Like, for example, in my family, I don't really, like I say, one of the reasons why maybe I'm not considered a comedian of the family is because I'm not trying to make them laugh, because, there's people in my family who are youth workers, they're foster carers. Their jobs contribute to society more than mine ever could. That's what I believe anyway.
Yeah.
They have and there's many people like that. So it's much more of a social contract to keep those people entertained and to make sure that I elevate them and put a smile on their faces, because, they're the people that are making, society tick. But at the same time, I just think personally, whether or not you want to, there is always an element of activism when you are a black person in a media space.
Agreed, yeah.
So some people, I'm not a role model and all the rest of it, and I'm not necessarily actively seeking it, but being a black person on TV and being able to say what you want in itself is an act of resistance. And I think a lot of the time people underestimate how rare that opportunity has been for how long. Because, for example, when I was growing up, everybody liked football. I didn't care about football because there's a lot of racism in football. And a lot of black players be like, well, you just have to keep your head down and play the full game and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, fuck that shit, man. What are you talking about, man? Muhammad Ali never kept his head down, because, I'm growing up on these films and biopics where, you have to make a stand. And for, when I think of every single iconic black artist or athlete, there always has to be an element of activism, whether it's in your actions or whether it's in your words. You are normally, engaged in an act of resistance because you are changing the status quo. You are entering into a space where there's not a lot of people like you, and you are aware that how you conduct yourself informs people almost how they're going to regard the rest of your community. And it's not fair, and it's fucked up, but this is where we are. I grew up watching The Big Brother, where it'd be like watching the lottery when you was black. Do you remember when you watch early Big Brother? Because if someone's mad that's getting in there, the next day we're gonna have to do the conference, the ethnic press conference, and be like, nah, we do like to shower. I don't know why they said that and blah blah blah.
Or are they gonna shame us? Or are they gonna?
Yeah. Or are they gonna because it'll be one of these ones like So my name is so and so. All right, I'm a rapper.
Science. I immediately think of science. Is it science?
I remember science.
Brian Bello.
Yeah, Brian Bello. Although to be fair, Brian Bello came up with the idea for Towie.
He did.
He came up with the idea for Towie.
And he sued them, and I think...
And he got his money finally, an undisclosed sum, but, hats off to him. It was, the whole aesthetic made sense in the end, but, it says a lot, but it does say a lot that, when you look at something like that as an institution, like reality TV and Towie, was a pioneer in that space. And, so for me, even that is an element of activism as well. Just from you being the brains behind something, even if you're not present in it, because typically you see black people on screen, and there is a white person that is profiting quite nicely from that as a concept. Whereas to see Brian kind of flip that on his head is a real dark horse, man. So I respect it.
Very.
Yeah.
And just to go back a little bit, saying about inherently we take on this position of activism when we're in these fields, but not all of us do. And I don't know if we're going to talk about.
We can. We definitely can. Come on,
Kanye.
Yeah, we
being a prime example of not doing that.
Well, I think he ebbs and flows with him.
Yes,
because I think Kanye is somebody where, and it's interesting that he's like this, to be honest, because obviously he is praised so much for being so innovative, but I think a lot of the time his sentiment represents the zeitgeist. So when Kanye kind of made his way into our screens and people were aware of it, Obama was president. So it made much more sense for him to speak in the narrative of being an activist, and also, with his affinity with his community. And that was like, through the wire, it was, he was going to tell the story how blacks came from glory and what we need to do in the game.
Yeah.
Only for then years later, in a Trumpian era, to be like slavery was a choice. I mean, I have my theories where Kanye is concerned.
Okay.
Because I watched the documentary In Whose Name.
Yes, so did I.
And basically, the long and short of it is he went broke, he needed money, he went to Turning Point USA, they bankrolled him so that he could go from being a kind of millionaire to a billionaire. And
grifting.
He's grifting. He was grifting. And but I think he paid a price for that, because I think that, how he was regarded, I think that his health was, his mental and physical health deteriorated as a result of it. And his relevance began to wane as well. Whereas I think, he may have had this kind of solace in this time now to rediscover parts of himself that he understands makes him affable to his fan base. So let's see where he goes next. But, at the end of the day, it's one of these things. It's like, do you go to your entertainers for guidance in terms of affirming your civil rights and your equality?
You shouldn't. But if you're young and you're impressionable...
Well, this is it.
This is the demographic that he's reaching out to. And you look at his, was it San Francisco? No, where was it? In the Dome?
The Dome, yeah.
If you look at the demographic, they're all young. They're white as well, which is interesting, but they're all young, So it's like those impressionable minds.
No, I completely agree. And I think that, like I said, for me, the motivation behind it is, like I said, I was raised on artists who naturally, because they give their worldview, can influence culture. And a lot of the time, I think for you to be a truly, effective artist, I won't say necessarily successful, but being an effective one, is that you have to create in a way that does resonate with the spirit of the time, and it also influences generations to make themselves feel empowered, because when you're an adolescent you're kind of lost, and so helping people to kind of work out the world, those are important things. And for me, I just feel like I was looking at that, I remember what it was like for me growing up, and so you want to maybe provide the what you were not given growing up. That's very important to me as well. And I feel like I feel like some people don't think they need to do that, but maybe they realize that at latter points in their life, but nobody remembers people like that.
No,
exactly. You can fade into obscurity. No one stays famous, whereas whether you're considered controversial or not, if you imprint on culture, people will remember you, and you will influence people. And I think that's probably the best endeavor of an artist, is that when your work transcends your physical self, then you've achieved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Earlier on, we were talking about US, UK, and I want to talk about the comparisons between the UK and the US. So do you think the UK properly values its black comedians compared to the US?
No. But, a lot of African-American comics would argue that they did experience the same kind of adversity.
Yeah.
It's just that it's a larger country with a larger diaspora population. So there's numbers whereby you can have a somewhat sustainable or, moderately successful career, even if you do just appear to the African-American demographic. But then, by the same token, if you are able to cross over into mainstream, it can be much more comparatively lucrative. But I think they have similar problems, but it's just amplified. But I think the main difference is that, in terms of the African-American, when we use that term, that's a much more established identity within the States.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Black British is a term that, when I was growing up, we didn't really use. It was more a term that we saw in the media, and even then it was very selective, and it was very much dependent on you appeasing the collective of white consciousness of the UK. Could you be bestowed with the term Black British, and then if you messed up, then you'd go back to the Jamaican heritage born. So for most black people, you say, like, I was born here, but my parents are from so-and-so. Whereas obviously we have successive generations of people that were born here, their parents are born here, so they're much more, have much more of an affinity, and have normalized more aspects of, British culture or Black British culture. So that's becoming an identity now. So there's obviously a lot of implications with that in terms of what that means, what that includes, what we keep, what we leave, what we make our own. But it's a difficult thing to happen, because I think that we are discovering this culture with much more visibility than we've ever had and necessarily need. And that means that a lot of people that are stakeholders, or people that are able to have controlling voices in the direction of our culture, can influence it in not necessarily positive ways. But yeah, I'd say just the main difference is that the African-American identity, and thus the African-American experience, is a bit more established than what's called a Black British experience. Because if you are a Black British comic, normally if you talk about your Black experience, it'd be like, well, my family are from the Caribbean, so this is what we do. We're from Nigeria, we're from Ghana. So whereas now there's much more of a galvanized community that is kind of growing up before our eyes. And so, they're beginning to, and I think in a lot of times very successfully articulate the Black British experience. But we just have to make sure that we stay on job, and that we don't allow for people to subvert that culture too much. Absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see how that looks in the next 10 or 20 years and how that evolves. What do you think the US understands about platforming black talent that the UK still kind of struggles with?
What a good question. Well, I think it's because America is a capitalist nation. And so if you can make somebody money, then no matter how you look, you may not be treated in the best way you deserve, but Americans, I guess, because they have a much more capitalist and also military-based mindset,
Yeah.
winning is what matters. So if a black person can make us the most money and get us the W, they will push that. Again, I also feel like the difference between British white and American white culture is American white culture has seen black people in their households for a much longer time. It's the legacy, the brutal legacy from chattel slavery, but it's also, you know, from then, you know, a lot of films like The Help and stuff where black people worked as domestics, and then, you know, through like early innovations in music and stuff, having black people in their households, even from the perspective of TV, is something they are very used to. So that's been much more normalized. Whereas I said before, a lot of white British people only see black people if they play for a football team that they like, or if they see the odds music video, and even then it's like, you know, prior to MTV Base. So yeah, very limited visibility. And because of that, it's almost like suggested to us, well, people don't really understand the black thing, and, you know, people, you know, people in Little Britain won't necessarily get it, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I went to university in West Yorkshire, and while it was a time warp, they got used to it in the end.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we can make the same thing happen here as well.
Yeah.
And also, you know, I remember BBC, for example, had a show called Mr. T's Craziest Fools. And I'm like, well, how can this guy from the 80s be here in 2002 doing a TV show, and you're saying that people don't understand the black experience? Like, you're going to wait another 20 years before they get used to it. So, yeah, I just feel like that really speaks more to the work and the presence of us needed on the other side of the microphone or the curtain in order to make that happen effectively, which, again, is happening very slowly now, but could always use a lot more. But I just think that, yeah, the main difference is, the other difference as well is that Britain has, class is a large part of the social fabric of the UK.
Yeah.
And so not only does that include black people being marginalised, but it also means that working class people are marginalised, because while in America, like, you can go to auditions and stuff and go, in the UK, it's like, there's like 5 like drama schools. And normally, and then even then, it's like a lot of the workforce that make up the creative industry are plucked from either these schools, and then these are fee-paying schools, and they go to like red brick universities. So a large amount of people that are privately educated, because obviously the people that work in these TV stations and own these media outlets are also privately educated. So people just try and create an environment where everybody's like them, and that leaves the rest of us kind of fighting for scraps.
It's
so
racism, isn't it? It's all this gatekeeping
massively, yeah,
that's happening.
Massively, yeah. And I think in the UK, it's something that's very normalised, even down to like journalism.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many jobs and spaces that if you do not have the resources and the status behind you, it's very hard to get into as a British person.
Oh my God, I remember coming out of university studying journalism, and it was very apparent it was who you knew and not what you knew that
Absolutely.
was gonna get you in. So
For everything, and it's for everything.
yeah.
Nepotism is a madness, and you know, even now, it's like there are so many spaces like journalism that I think a lot of our community, we don't even think about the barriers to entry that our peers will experience, because, you know, I'm good friends with Richard Essien, who is also known as Magical Bones. So he's been a performer. He's also been like so I remember he's a street dancer, but he's also a very good magician. And I was thinking, right, how many black magicians are there? Oh, there's some.
But
I could name 2.
Yeah, but
it's like him and Troy.
right? Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's like the access to it. Like, even my tattoos are done by a black tattoo artist. And I was like, he was like, yeah, again, you go to like tattoo fairs and all the rest of it, you don't see a lot of people looking like us. So, you know, there are just so many spaces where not only are we seldom seen, but there's also not a lot of support and awareness that kind of surround that. So, which is why, again, it's like, you know, me opining and talking about unity is not just about like just for the sake of activism for any kind of like, we're going to burn it all down. It's just because it's having a thriving community where we can resource share and experience and enjoy the creativity and the competency of one another.
Because culture, particularly music and comedy, it always comes from us anyway. So it's like how we keep that in an equitable way and move that forward.
I mean, it's one of the only places where, you know, people cannot argue with our competence.
Right.
And it's not to say that, you know, there are numerous successful and very capable black politicians, but leaders of industry and industrialists and medical and legal and clerical professionals, people in finance. But normally where we get the most visibility, and I suppose that there's a level where we transcend both class and race, is normally within the holy trinity of like sports and entertainment and crime. and crime.
I was going to say fashion.
My fashion,
You
yeah,
said crime.
my fashion too. Well, I mean, fashion, but fashion it should be.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're much more likely if you go to talk to somebody about this is a script about a black designer who's trying to get into this is a script about a council estate and blah blah. They're like, oh my god, are they poor? How poor are they?
Yeah.
Are their fathers in it? No. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So, you know, it's a point where people are almost like aroused by our struggle.
Do you know when you were saying that the word that came was like trauma porn?
Yeah,
like, they love that.
Yeah, they do, and you know, which was a big part of TV in the early 2000s as well, like poverty porn. Because I remember like where was it Benefit Street?
Oh God, yes.
Remember, and there was a woman called White D, and everyone was like, yeah, you know, blah blah. Where they like now? I don't think anyone's laughing on that road anymore.
No, I don't think you can even platform that now because it's so.
Because people are aware. Yeah, people be like, this is insane. Like I said, it's just like poverty porn. It's crazy. So, you know, it's just and that is why it's very important. And as I said, mostly because now the visibility is global.
Yeah.
So people will form their perception of us based on what they see in the media. So the more agency we have over that is crucial. But also at the same time, it's like we have also proven effectively, especially as Black Britons, that we are commercially viable, and there is definitely interest in the work that we create. You know, now we find out like 80% of all like British music that's streamed around the world is Black British, and we've contributed up to excess of like billions in the last 30 years. Yeah, but see, if you were to hear them chat, well, first of all, well, urban music, urban. I'm gonna show people like urban. They couldn't even bring themselves to call it black music.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I've been thinking so much just about the word ownership.
Yeah.
And you know, protecting your IP. So I think that's where we need to start moving forward. You know, like just building those ecosystems within our own community and pushing that forward.
I think it's arguably one of the, even though it's not the fun part or the creative part, but it's probably the most important part of how we function in show business. Show is one thing, different thing about being innovative and thinking outside the box, but the business part, that's where we need to definitely make sure that we solidify our grasp.
Yeah, it's about marrying that creativity with the business end of things. Absolutely.
Because that's how I started out. Like, I wasn't trying to be famous or be on TV. Like, I was like, I wanted to be like Steve Stout, who was like Nas, the rapper's manager, and now he runs like a business where he is a consultant, so he kind of matches brands to like prolific black icons, whomever they be, entertainers or they're like rappers and stuff. So that's what I wanted to do because I thought that was something that we lacked, because when I grew up, everybody wanted to be famous. So I was like, well, we can't all be famous. So I did like a business degree at uni because I was like, maybe I could be somebody's agent one day and blah, blah, blah. But then obviously upon graduating and experiencing the world, the corporate world, I was like, this is not for me.
No,
I'm not doing very well here. I've had this is my fourth disciplinary. You know, I just don't function. I don't know what it was, man. I just feel, well, to be quite honest, I do know what it was. I feel when you talk like I do, there are some people that get very intimidated by that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then code switching comes into play.
Yeah.
And then we're going down the whole rabbit hole. And
I feel like I'm articulate enough that I don't necessarily need to code switch. It's not like I would be like, and these will be the figures for the first quarter. You get me, fam? That's not like I wasn't like that.
Yeah, of course.
But it'd be more of a question of where, you know, I'm working in an office in 2008 where we have the subprime mortgage crisis and the credit crunch, and then like, I'm working selling jobs like on a job board. And like, so Dane, are you going to get more jobs? And I'm like, you do realize we're in a recession, right? Well, that's not the attitude to have and blah, blah. What? We can't sell jobs if people aren't moving jobs. Like, these externalities are going to affect the business. People don't like to hear that because a lot of people just go to work to do the job and go home and don't really think about the outcome. And again, I just felt like, this is not me.
So, you picked up on that. Legacy.
Yes.
We wrap and come up to the end. So what do you want your contribution to British comedy to mean when people look back?
I guess first of all, I'd like people to think that I was a very, very good comic, like one of the best of my generation. Definitely. In fact, I would accept no less. And I definitely want to push myself, maybe because I'm a Virgo and a perfectionist, that's what I'm trying to do. But I definitely want to be remembered as one of the more talented acts of my generation. Definitely a pioneer and a trailblazer would be cool. Have a positive influence on successive generations of comedians. But most of all, just be a nice person that made people laugh. Definitely made people's lives easier, particularly people from, you know, historically oppressed minorities or people that are very vulnerable. I really hope that the work I've done just makes their lives a bit easier and easier to navigate in the same way that like the comedy that I saw did for me. So overall, just paying it forward, man, and just people can just be like, yeah, man, it always used to make me laugh, man. Or even, and I think most importantly, I definitely understand that my success is the culmination of the work that went before me.
Yes.
And so I definitely want to make sure that that generation feel like I took the baton and carried it well on their behalf, and in the spaces that they weren't able to get into, and in the spaces where they couldn't say what they wanted to say, I was able to complete the work that they started.
Very, very pioneer of you, absolutely. So I like to do a thing called full circle moment.
Yes.
So basically, if you could go back to the version of yourself before comedy took off,
Yeah.
what would you tell him?
Good question. I would tell him, stop smoking.
Oh. Oh.
Stop smoking. Because you are not going to like the trips to the dentist when you are done. That's first of all. So then they'll trust me. I'll be like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess, I suppose just to believe in yourself. To believe in yourself, to treat others as you want to be treated, trust your instincts, and just take every opportunity, say yes to the stuff. Don't allow for your fear or ego to stop you embracing every opportunity.
Yeah.
And most of all, to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, I could definitely, on reflection, be like, sometimes there's been times where I should have been like, oh my God, I'm sitting next to Idris Elba, like, this is amazing. And so I focused on being professional and stuff like that as well, that I don't even think about it. But yeah, there's been a few points in my career where, like, it's like, you're on in a studio with Mel B and Pork Pie and Shirley from Desmond's. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you've done it. Like, I don't know what your idea of success is, but look where you are. And so yeah, definitely I would say, as I am an older man, just sometimes take time, enjoy the flowers, man.
Enjoy the flowers, absolutely. What's coming next? Like, where can people find you? What's happening?
Cool. So thank you very much for having me, first of all. People can find me. First of all, head on to danebaptiste.co.uk to find out a gig near you, because I'm all over the country and out the country sometimes as well.
Yeah.
You can find my content on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. Also have a YouTube channel for my podcast, which is now Citizen Dane, and I'll be updating that as well. Where else can you find me? Sometimes stuff comes up on TV and stuff, and I just don't even remember when I filmed it, or it just comes out. So yeah, I'm normally about, man. You just find me online and stuff. Or I guess now where I'm definitely trying to make sure I keep up the social commentary. So just check out the socials, and when the wild stuff happens, then I'm sure I'll have a take.
Yeah.
But yeah, take out danebaptiste.co.uk for all gig things. Or do you know what? I'm pretty chill, man. If you want to see me, just holler at me, man. I'm about. So yeah.
Yeah. That's my alarm. Okay, let me stop it. Thank you so much for coming down. Like, it's been a great chat. Thank you so much.
Having me.
Yes.
I feel like we didn't get into your story.
Oh, we'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah, because I just know the journalism thing. I was like, that's intriguing. I'd like to hear more about that. So I'm sure there's a lot in there. But it's good, and it's more of these spaces need to exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a name dropping story.
Go on.
I remember being contacted by a lady who asked me to help get her friend's accounts verified so she could look like the official business, and I was like, I'll be happy to help. Just send me her passport or driving license. She's like, she don't drive, and I was like, you don't drive? That's insane. Well, that's fine. We could sort that as well. ZZ Mills.
No way.
Way.
There we go.
But yeah, so I mean, and that's another good thing, is that that's an example of finding community, and I think that when I look at somewhere like America and they have like this massive Oprah legacy, and then I see like Jennifer Hudson and Tyra Banks, I think that the nucleus of our community, which is obviously black women, the more places they can have voices and talk about the experience, I think it definitely helps and empowers all of us. So yeah, any way I can help with that is all good.
Oh, brilliant, Dane. Thank you for being you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited just to see like where your journey continues and the spaces that you open up, and how you flourish. So
yeah, it's going to be mad, but I have a therapist. There's also a very lovely black woman. So
therapy's important.
So important. I can't stress that enough, fellas. It changed my life.
Yes.
But until you get there, I will be providing the best medicine in the form of comedy therapy if you come and see me as well, people. So thank you very much, and thank you to you, Zoe.
Love the plug. Guys, thank you so much for joining us once more. And if you want to follow the Black Circle's journey, we are on the blackcircle.podcast across all platforms. And don't forget to like, follow and subscribe. Thank you.